Let's kick it off. Right, so thank you very much for joining me today, AJ. So I
Pleasure.
have a question for you to kick this off, right? And that is, what drove you towards bodybuilding naturally and not going like the untested route? Because I guess like probably when you started off in bodybuilding, the untested side was probably like just as big, if like obviously a little bit smaller than it is today. But natural bodybuilding was definitely a niche subculture of bodybuilding. So what drove that
Mm.
decision?
Yeah, no, I think for sure, like assisted bodybuilding will always be the bigger and more attractive thing for most people to follow bodybuilding, just because it's like the spectacle and everyone looks up to the freaks, right? And I think in natural bodybuilding we just have a different kind of freak, it's the conditioning we hit, things like that, and the look that we achieve is somewhat different to the assisted realm. And the reason why I discussed that is because that is kind of what attracted me to staying natural and pursuing natural bodybuilding and making it my thing, is because I really liked the look of some of the top natural bodybuilders. Like there's a certain look, there's a certain physique that is presented at that top level where it's a combination of, a certain level of dryness, a certain level of hardness to the look, a certain paper thin skin, detailed presentation that you do get on maybe some assisted guys, but you don't see it often. You see more so common. It's like very, very big. Very like, yes, of course, the stage lean, but the stage lean is different. And they talked about it quite a lot on Fire's podcast actually about how and they just get to a point that these guys have so much size, and you think about like muscle fiber on top of muscle fiber and layers of tissue that it stops their ability to get that same level of detail that maybe they even had earlier in their career. So like Ian Vallier's glutes were like harder when he was, a junior versus when he was top of the men's open Arnold Classic, because the layering of muscle and maybe, the areas that he's getting inflammation from scar tissue, from injection sites, it all builds up and it creates just a different look. So I think for me it was about the look. It was about, I want to look, this grainy, hard, granity kind of detail is more something that I'm interested in. And then honestly, I kind of like I fell into being a coach that just, of course, only worked with natural athletes, and I have coached and taken a great assisted athletes to the stage, taken 3 or 4 assisted athletes to the stage, and of course, I didn't at that time help with their PED protocols because I didn't want to intervene on that front. But even when I tried, like with Jack Richardson's prep, when we prepped together in 2023 or two, I think it might have been two, but I learned more, and I did like the whole of J3U on the PED
Mhm.
side, and I asked Cuba a load of questions, and I tried to like play a role where I was someone else was helping him, but I was trying to understand so I could have a say rather than just say, "Oh yeah, that sounds good." And I just didn't enjoy it. I just didn't enjoy that aspect of coaching either. So because there was a point in my coaching career where I thought, what if I was to try to? Because I did have quite a few inquiries at one point, especially when I was coaching Jack for assisted athletes, and I thought, like maybe this is something that I want to pursue. But that proved to me that it just wasn't. And it also proved to me that I wouldn't personally want to go down that route either, because I saw what they were doing. I saw what they had to do to achieve that look. And it wasn't something that I wanted to personally sort of go down the route of. So, yeah, for me, the look, the process, that's what kind of drove me to stay natural.
I think what you mentioned there with the coaching is it kind of speaks to what makes people effective coaches, though, because experience with a certain thing, like or the thing you're coaching somebody for, I think makes you just like better at your job. So like naturally enough, if you are like a natural and you're trying to coach somebody who is on PEDs, you don't have that lived experience. Like of course, yeah, like I've done J for you too, and while I might know a little bit more about drugs now, I don't know what the experience from an athlete point of view would be like. So I would never have the confidence to be able to actually kind of bring somebody through a prep, or like bring somebody through an off season or wherever it may be, using some kind of cycles, because there's just not that lived experience there. Um, one thing as well you can mention at the start in regards to the physiques within kind of the untested side. I think obviously now we have the classic bodybuilding division, right? And we probably came up around kind of similar time, like just getting into natural bodybuilding. And I think then because there was no classic bodybuilding, I know for me, I could just never picture myself as somebody who was like an open bodybuilder. I could never see myself, and it's slightly unrealistic as well to expect that I could be like 300 pounds shredded on stage, right? So I saw like the natural guys, and I thought like that's something I could realistically work towards. And I think then the further along you get in it, and you notice that okay, if I commit to this for like 5 years, I've developed a pretty good physique. Is like going over to the other side really going to bring me much more happiness or much more joy? And then you see bodybuilding has grown so much for the natural side of things as so competitive. You're like, is it even really worth crossing over? Because this side here is just as fun. It's obviously a lot better for your health and the physiques themselves. Once you get up to like the top naturals, like these guys look like they could be on drugs.
Yeah, I think the bottom line, and for anyone listening, it's like you have to make that decision based on a few things. I think number one is if you want to be a competitive bodybuilder in any shape or form, I think the first way to understand whether you want to do that or not is to do it naturally. Figure out whether you can adhere to the process of going through cutting, bulking cycles, and even just don't even go on stage, but go through a structured gaining phase, go through a structured diet phase, and assess your ability to adhere. If you can't adhere to that when you're drug free, drugs ain't going to help you. It's not a cheat code. It's not going to make anything easier. If anything, it's going to give you more things to think about, more things to do, and make the whole process a little bit more challenging in some ways. And then if you really love it, you enjoy it, and you love stepping on stage, then I think you've got to think about the second thing, which is what physiques do I aspire to? What do I actually want to look like? And then if your look that you're aspiring to is absolutely something that is not within the natural realm, or it's a size that you can't attain within your genetic potential, which, let's face it, you are very, I don't want to say limited because I don't like the word limited, but there is a limited amount of potential of natural growth. Unless you are a Babacar or an Oscar Muscat or, some of these guys that are very freaky and very hardworking, the amount of muscularity you can achieve naturally is somewhat capped compared to if you were, average genetics, but go assisted, you're going to have a new level of cap. Your cap for size is now significantly larger, even with, mediocre genetics, you can get still pretty big. So it's like, what do you want to look like? And then that's your assessment, and that's it. And, either whatever way people go, I think the most important thing is that you're going down a route that serves purpose. And I think a lot of people go down the assisted route too early as a result of making decision number 2 in their first 1 or 2 years of training. So they're like, I don't want to look like a natural guy. They probably even haven't seen a natural guy in person, then gone to a show, so they don't know what it can look like. That's probably the best thing you can do, is go to a show and actually witness what natural bodybuilders can really look like at the top level. Then make your assessment and think, you know what? Actually, I'd really like to be a bit bigger than these guys. All right, I'm going to maybe pursue going down the assisted route once you've, again, ideally done either at least a really good few diets or taking yourself to the stage naturally. Because that is a foolproof way of understanding, okay, but have I got what it takes? And, I've also had people, to be honest, there's very few people that I've strayed away, because I obviously work with a lot of higher level naturals, and at some point, some of them do want to go down the assisted route. And normally, they will genuinely ask my opinion, what do you think? Do you think that this is a good idea or not? And there's very few that I've had the conversation with where I said, no, this is not something you should do. But I actually had a conversation with one of my very, very long-standing clients. I think we had check-in number 382 this week. And that guy's been working with me since 2018. And he said it a couple of times now, whenever we spent time together at shows when he's competed. He said, I want you to be the coach to take me to the Olympia. And I love it because I love his mindset and I love how consistent he is. He's probably one of the most consistent clients I work with. And that's one of the reasons why I've told him both times, you should absolutely stay natural and not go down that route of going assisted. And there's a big reason behind that is that he's already unbelievably consistent and dedicated and disciplined and doing everything right, beyond everything right. Like off season, ticking every box, prep every single box. And he's still struggling to place in the top 3 at any high level natural bodybuilding show, but wants to achieve getting on the Olympia stage if he was to go assisted. So what's going to happen if he goes assisted? Honestly, to be brutally honest, the same thing. Struggle to place in the top 3 at IFBB Pro qualifier shows, never attain IFBB Pro status. This is horrible. This is what I literally said to him, but it's true. It's what he needs to hear. And then be an assisted bodybuilder who's years cut off his life and bodybuild for a less amount of time because there's only so long you can be assisted, and have a bunch of other potential side effects that will come after bodybuilding that may involve the deterioration of his mental health as well. Because when you're so dedicated and disciplined towards a goal and you then don't achieve it, that results in some outcomes at the end that are negative. So in that case, I was like, it's the worst decision you could make. Like, please, let's not do this. Let's just stay natural, focus on the process, keep stepping forwards year to year, keep enjoying it as much as you already do. And the last few check-ins, because that kind of conversation happened October, the last few check-ins, as he's come out of this very intensive prep mindset, he's been like, thank you so much for having those conversations with me, because he was like, especially this year, like this past prep, he was full on set on going assisted after it. And he was like, if you hadn't have had those conversations with me, I would have just done it. Because he'd already inquired with other coaches for the PEDs and was getting everything ready. And I was like, mate, like this is a bad move. And now he's so appreciative of that, because for him, that wasn't the right reasons, and I'm more than prepared to sit and argue with people if I have to protect them from something that I think is just going to be wrong. But equally, there's other athletes where they've legit got the potential to achieve their goals within the assisted realm. And, like Jack, like Emma, for example, where I've been like, this is the right move for you. Go ahead. Because, like Jack and like Emma, very early on into their natural bodybuilding career, they've kind of achieved a lot of very high level shit already, kind of just out of the gate. So where do you go? You could compete in the pro ranks, but really the pro ranks in natural bodybuilding is only left for the people that really are truly wanted to just stay natural their whole career and have a full-on natural bodybuilding career, which is great. And I'd be interested to know whether the fact that the IFBB now coming into the natural scene would have influenced some people that have now gone assisted maybe in the last 5 years, and they would have thought, oh, you know what, if they're doing it, maybe that's my way to get into the Olympia or the natural IFB Olympia that might be formed in the future. I think that's great, because I might keep more people drug free, but at the same time, the actual Olympia is always going to be the actual Olympia. And I think the IFBB section, and we might talk a bit more about this, but the IFBB section of natural bodybuilding is always going to be in the shadows of its bigger brother, so to speak. You're not going to go to an IFBB show with your main objective as a spectator to watch the natural section. You're going to go to watch the open boys and girls. That's really going to be it. And then if you are like our niche in natural bodybuilding is die-hard natural bodybuilders. So the people that are sat at the NBW watching the NBW, the people that are sat watching WNBF Worlds are die-hard natural bodybuilding fans. The thing that we can do better is get the niche bigger and also bring in more of the standard bodybuilding fan in general to realize how cool it is. The limitation to that is that the standard sit-at-home bodybuilding fan is also the person that doubts when you have a six-pack and some vascularity, whether someone's natural. So, and then they'll be like, but if they've been drug tested, but as, yeah. And then it's hard to get through to those people. So we're always going to have that limitation, and that's why the crowds will always be that little bit smaller. The funding will always be a little bit smaller, but it's massively upscaled in the last 10 years. It's only going to upscale more in the next 10 years as more people get into what is, as a small niche becomes a bigger niche, basically. That's what we'll work with.
What do you think since like your first show? So your first show was what year?
2014.
2014.
Yeah.
So what about like the shows that are on today would have like kind of shocked you back then? Like the way they're kind of ran, production quality of competitors. What do you think would have been like the kind of standout feature?
I mean, man, I think everything. Don't get me wrong, back in 2014, there was federations doing a decent job. UKDFBA was doing a decent job. BNBF was the first show I ever did. BNBF, British Natural Bodybuilding Federation. You know, what BNBF have been very consistent with is they've always had incredible stage lighting, and they've put on a proper event for natural bodybuilders. You know, true and true. Like very, very, very good from day dot. So that's something that they always did very well. The numbers now in, you know, the higher tier shows are like so much more than they used to be. And that's literally as a byproduct of social media influence, of not necessarily like lighting quality or stages quality. I think us at the MBW a bit biased, but we did a really good job at like making everything really matter. So like the venue, the stage, the lighting, the media, like everything was like set to really make an impact. And I thought we really did a good job there. But, you know, even still, like the main thing that has driven the sport forwards in terms of numbers is the social media influence and nailing that. And, you know, federations like the PCA, like WNBF UK, like UKDFBA and MBW this year, especially UKDFBA now being owned by Christian, who's already doing, being honest, a substantially better job with the social media aspect, which was previously lacking. We're going to get those big numbers. And it's unfortunate to see where the social media has lacked, unfortunately, and this is just me being honest. This is not like a critique. Where the social media has lacked, federations like the MPA or BNBF, their numbers are drastically down. And, you know, all that needs to be done is blasting social. You know, that like I post almost every single day on the MBW page now promoting the show in some shape or form, because it, you know, people think, oh, you know, posting too much, everyone knows about it. No. It needs to be rammed down people's throats. It's like, it's like why we still get, you know, content creators telling us how to train our lats, is because there's still people out there that can't train their lats and they still need to hear this information. So yes, social media is like regurgitation of the same kind of stuff, but it's so important for federations to be social media savvy. And if you're not savvy as a promoter, which some people aren't, you know, older generations might hate social media and hate the people that are on it. Cool. Hire someone young to do it. It's not that hard. Just literally employ a social media planner or promoter or whatever for your fed, and you're probably going to have a much better opportunity to get in the numbers that you want to get in. Can't in this day and age, the amount of shows there are, you can't survive with shit social media, and you can't survive with poor anything really, because people come at you like leashes. You know, you'll get teenagers that will tell other people it's the worst show in the world, and people aren't going to come back. So, and the crazy thing about some shows is that just because they have a certain pro card available, they can charge whatever they want under the sun for the entry fee and give you a pretty terrible stage to step on. I don't really charge you a drug testing fee when you're not getting drug tested and still get quality numbers. Why? Because all that people care about is getting a card.
Yeah.
And that's the one thing that I really wish as a promoter people see, is people see that for doing like our show, the MBW, it's not about just doing it to get a card. Like, if anything, I really want to not promote the fact that there's cards available, but promote the fact that I'm all in on this being an amazing experience. I'm all in on you coming away and having the best photos, you coming away on the best video, you coming back and being able to watch yourself on 4K live stream. You know, like, all of these things are at my expense, essentially, to make it better for the athlete. Whereas it's kind of completely twisted in the other way around in some feds, where it's like, it's all about the promoter making more P and the athlete having literally a poorer experience. So yeah, that's something that I really think that if I can get that seen as much as possible, through younger athletes coming and doing our show especially, and talking more about it on social, that'll be a game changer, and that'll be then a game changer for hopefully other feds to think, oh shit, like, we can't just survive on the card element, we have to really up our game. And then everyone benefits, because there's a lot of people doing very, very well. You know, again, I mentioned WMBK, PCA, you know, like now UKDFBA as well. Like, there's a lot of feds putting in the hard work and the grind to be able to give back to the athletes. So hopefully that becomes more of a clear level playing field of quality, regardless of what's on offer.
Yeah, I think the increase in visibility is something that is only going to help. Like, every federation, like, I recorded a podcast last week with David Shaughnessy, who won the WNBF middleweights in Ireland. And one thing we were talking about was just, like, you know, WNBF, MBFI in Ireland, like, they could do a better job of promoting the shows. You know, like,
definitely, yeah.
It's like a lot of it can come down to just word of mouth, unfortunately. And, you know, when you have to, like, inquire with somebody on Instagram to see who placed where, when, what people look like, unless you go to the show, which, again, there's only going to be so many people who can actually attend the show, it kind of just means then the event happened and it kind of, like, dies with the date itself, right? There's no, as you said, the 4K live stream that you can watch back in the NBW channel and see what the show looked like. And from somebody who's a competitor, you'd be like, I want to do that show. But if you don't know a show even exists because there's no, like, real media presence, you know, it doesn't really going to give you much enticement to go. And especially now, considering that, you know, social media is like the way we pretty much communicate, like, within the sport. You know, there's an increase in people running podcasts who just talk about natural bodybuilding, which is fantastic. There's pages that just cover natural bodybuilding, and there's, like, people like the actual, like, natural bodybuilders promoting their own journey through their YouTube, Instagram, whatever it may be. And they're the people who are kind of driving the sport forward. And I don't think, you know, federations can really kind of rely on them doing the job for them. Like, you know, it has to kind of come from within. I was going to say something else there about my fucking mind's actually going blank. But yeah, like, even from the younger people's perspective, right? Like, they're the people who are going to be the future of sport, realistically, right? And, like, social media is the language they use. So definitely, as you said, they're kind of pushing it onto pushing the kind of competition towards those kind of more kind of junior classes, and kind of building those athletes up and telling their story, you know, because that's how people get involved in sports and people enjoy sports more, right? Like, there's, like, I know you like the Drive to Survive, and, like, I know you like Formula One. There's also, you know, like Fuad Aviad's podcast, right? Their podcast is pretty much centered around kind of building up to the shows, and telling the story of athletes, and that makes me interested in wanting to watch, like, the IFBB shows. But if I don't hear it from our side of things, nothing's making me want to watch a show, because I don't know people's story. I'm not rooting for anybody. And that's how we actually get interested in sports. Right? It's the story behind it versus just the spectacle.
That's absolutely it. And I think, honestly, you've struck a few of the things that, like, a webcam has come about, by the way. you struck a few things that I really want to do for natural bodybuilding moving forwards. And, one of the big things that I want is I want to build that ability to increase viewership and increase the motivation to want to spectate and increase the likelihood of people like forming these attachments to athletes, rivalries, etc. through the use of the, especially the professional ranks of the NBW show, where, we could send out a camera crew to the pro athletes that are competing in the lineups, film a little bit of their story, put it on my YouTube channel, and build up hype, So we build hype of an athlete that's coming in, and we build these kind of like mini rivalries. Like, imagine if, in the lead up to WMBF Worlds, and I'm going to claim full responsibility if they go ahead and copy this. But imagine if in the lead up to WMBF Worlds, you have a video that's put out from Oscar Muscat, and it's just about, him, his life, how he got into bodybuilding. It's like 30-minute video, like the old MOC production videos from Road to Olympia. It's like that kind of style video. And then you have one from Babacar, and then you have a poster of them looking like they're fighting each other out like as a rivalry. Imagine that. Like, that's fucking cool as shit. And you go ahead and watch that, and it will build hype, and it will build, again, that buy-in to athletes, understanding them a little bit more. And then it builds also, I think, more credibility for people understanding that these guys are drug-free, because when you watch someone's story, when you hear them speak, when they talk about their, how long they've been doing it, 20 years plus of lifting, you look at them in their family life, you're like, you almost then start to realize, fucking hell, this guy's not just a guy that's got an elite physique, he's got a real life, he's a real humble, normal person, and that then builds that rapport, and then people actually believe a little bit more, and that will help, because again, the problem is people also then don't believe when someone is really good. They don't believe that they are drug-free or natural, and if we build more of a real person behind these athletes, it will help so much to get out the fact that, these people are just normal guys. They're just like elite genetics. So yeah, I think that is super important. I'd love to see some more of that. I'm working on doing more of that where I can, to give back to the kind of the media side, and building up fan bases and stuff like that within the sport, because I think that is growing stronger. There's a lot of very good natural bodybuilders with a huge access to, social media following. There's guys out there now with like 500k plus Instagram followings that are great natural bodybuilders. And then there's others that are great natural bodybuilders that have like no more than like 3,000 followers. The discrepancy is huge. It's dramatic. Whereas in the assisted realm, it's like every single one of the top 10 in the Olympia have probably between 500 and 1 million followers. So again, that demographic of understanding who is the top natural bodybuilders, who are they, what's their stories, that can still be worked on so much over the next 5 to 10 years. But I think that's something that will come. And then I think the closest thing that we had on Netflix was obviously the Generation Iron thing, which followed people to the PNBA Olympia. But I think, again, the way that was documented was somewhat very heavily dramatized, and you didn't really get to know these people that much. But that was a good step forwards for sure. Like, that's at least something, and credit to the PNBA for being able to get an opportunity, because that's fucking huge. I mean, I'd die for an opportunity like that. Imagine getting something like that for. But the crazy thing about that is, like, if you think about it, like, that didn't do much. Like, whatever happened there, that didn't do much, because the Natural Olympia, I'm not gonna lie, mate. I mean, you've been, haven't you?
Yeah. It's
not good.
Yeah.
It's not good. The venue's not good. The lighting's not good. So imagine if that year that they'd filmed it, they put it on in like a new venue, theater, something incredible. made it look amazing to compete naturally. Instead, I think what that did is it actually maybe even hurt natural bodybuilding, because it made it look like you compete in a ballroom. And that is honestly what a lot of an American natural bodybuilding looks like. The landscape of the American natural bodybuilding shows is very much like you compete in a high school, you have lighting that's not actually stage lighting, but it's just part of the ballroom setup. And, it might be in a grand location, like literally in the Vegas hotel or whatever it may be, but that means nothing, in my opinion, to the athlete. Again, I've done these shows. It meant nothing to me being in that location. What matters to me is being on a good stage. When you look back at the stage photos, you don't see the where you are. You see the lighting, you see the backdrop. That's what you see. So that matters the most, in my opinion, as opposed to paying for a location. So, yeah, I don't think that necessarily helps. But again, what also doesn't help is like the whole trajectory of not understanding really who is the best natural bodybuilder, because there's so many different world championships, so many different of the best natural bodybuilders out there. And I don't think that's a huge issue of like that being like something that will like stop it getting significantly bigger. But what needs to happen is a little bit more unity, a little bit more fighting against each other. And, especially now with the IFBB coming into the mix, kind of have a clear pathway now of we either own and take forwards true drug-free natural bodybuilding with 10-year drug-free sort of bans, 7 years, 10 years, with great stages, with good prize money, or the IFBB takes over, it becomes the 3-year rule. We get a lot more shady naturals, let's be honest. And we get perhaps sitting in the foreshadow or whatever of the bigger assisted bodybuilding shows. And we're like the second tier down. So yeah, I think to cut a long story short, it's about doing things right across the board moving forwards.
Yeah, you kind of steered on to something I was going to talk about there in regards to the unification of the bodybuilding federations, because it is very much like boxing, where you just have like multiple world champions, and you always see like the social media pages say who would win this battle from one person to the next, and like I think obviously the IFBB coming into the picture is it's kind of an interesting one for me, because I guess I don't see a huge amount of people right now, or maybe this is just I haven't seen it, right? But people who are competing in the IFBB who were competing for a long time, like the other federations, like the WNBF, DFAC, and I guess like the likes of the PNBA, UKDFBA, and like it automatically kind of sends off kind of alarm bells in my head. Like, why only now are we deciding to compete in bodybuilding? And again, this could just be the fact I haven't seen them compete in previous federations. But I do think there has to be some across the board agreement between federations in regards to drug testing and policy there, because that's definitely like the biggest talking point from spectators of the sport and people who want to enjoy like natural bodybuilding. Like, it is hard to put your faith in people winning shows that, again, there's suspect drug enforcement policies, whether that's the method of testing used, or you hear from people at shows to say they didn't drug test anybody in the top three. And I'm like, okay, well, I don't know what to believe in it, because again, you could just be chancing your arms. Of course, I know that some federations have been posting, this athlete has been banned, he's been found with this substance found in his blood, blah blah blah. But it's also how much of that is lip service and how much of that is like honest posting too. Like, like there could be some people who are not being posted and told about because they could have good influence. It's really, really hard to say. So there just needs to be some transparency here. Where did your mind go to when we talk about like the kind of drug testing policies?
I think there's limitation with all drug testing policies. Obviously, the ideal scenario would be that we do out-of-season testing for a lot of athletes, especially professionals. The great scenario would be that we urine test and maybe even blood test every single one of the top 3. These are all ideal scenarios, but they're all very much scenarios that require a significant amount of funding. And the more funding that you put towards the drug testing, the less funding that can go towards, the athlete experience. And it's a battle. And, obviously running the MBW last year was my first experience of paying drug testing fees, and they aren't cheap at all. But it was also my first experience of having my thoughts very much confirmed with some elements of drug testing. So, for example, I think the polygraphing way of drug testing is only serving as a deterrent. It's like people see the polygraph and they're like, well, fucking hell, polygraph. Not sure if I can risk it if they're like trying to hide something, right? But there's a problem with that in the sense that I've seen now multiple what I would deem as like false failures, where I have, what I consider to be legitimate urine testing to prove that someone is drug free, and then they've done a polygraph and failed it, and you've got to argue like, what is the more consistent grounds to be able to stand on? Is it a urine test that's proven that there's none of the water banned substances in their system at time of taking? Or is it a yes or no question or a head nod or whatever it may be with the polygraph that's taking in a high peak stress state, where a lot of these people taking the polygraphs are also high level coaches with a lot of like pressure on the line, so to speak, about confirming their natural status? I don't know. I think I've been proven more times than not this year that it's a limited tool. And especially when you get people that will commit to spending thousands and thousands of pounds or dollars to travel to a show and then fail a polygraph, be told they can't compete. And it's like, why would you even bother traveling that far? Why would you even risk it if you knew that you'd taken something? You wouldn't. No normal person would do that. And it's a great shame to see that happen a few times this year with athletes that are just genuinely probably nervous going into the polygraph setting. So I think polygraph's limited. I think the amount of total drug testing is somewhat limited. But we're always trying to do our best and also find even new ways to be able to test people and be able to put up deterrence. And I think what the natural community can do as a whole, that's a good thing, is like be very clear and have complete clarity when someone does fail like a legit test. Someone fails a legit blood or urine sample, that should be publicized. That should be like, right, this person failed on this date for this reason, publicize it so that they cannot compete in other federations. The IMBP NBA does a good job of that. They publicize all of their failures, and I've been at their shows and I've been drug tested pretty much every single time that I've done one of their shows by legit processes. I've also had clients that have been a part of the federation, have memberships, and they've been visited at random during the off season by their drug official. So I think there's a lot of things that are being done pretty well, and especially in like Europe, the Austrian shows, the Germany shows, the drug testing that I've seen in person there is very, very professionally ran. And then I've been at other shows where it's as bad as it's as bad as it can get, really. Like, from charging for a drug test that you don't do. What on earth is the point of that? That blows my mind, that you can be charged money for something that is not taking place. So if you're charging a drug testing fee for the athlete, that is clearly a drug testing fee. It's like if it's just build it into the price of the entry fee.
Yeah.
Just charge more to the entry fee. That's the most simple way to cut it, isn't it? It's like, if you need to get $50 more out of me, just charge me $50 more. No one's going to complain. But when you pay a drug testing fee that is in cash as well, so obviously lovely tax avoidance with the cash, perfect. So it's in cash. You don't get drug tested. Like, just profiting from doing a natural show. And that's why I think it's really wrong.
Yeah.
Then I witness the testing, and I see the fact that you are given the urine sample thing, whatever, but allowed to travel the entire way across the venue to the toilet, to be unaccompanied to the toilet, to take the urine, to bring the urine back. That's completely incorrect.
Yeah, it's a lot.
When you're taking, when you're taking a urine sample, that urine sample has to be witnessed. If you know, as much as someone literally watching you piss into the bottle, or at least being in a single cubicle in a drug testing facility in the actual venue, where you do not leave until you've urinated. That's how drug testing should take place, because for all they know, you could have got fucking their Uncle John's piss from the toilet and brought it back. Uncle John is drug free and I'm not. You know what I mean? It's like, obviously, it'd be very sad to do something like that, but it's possible. So, you know, I think there's, without going on a massive ramble, and I don't care whether, you know, people have something against me saying these things, but this is exactly why I did a lot of different federations this last year with my competitive season, because I wanted to personally experience what it was like to do shows, to get drug tested, and then be able to feed it back. You know, there were shows that I did last year that were natural shows that I did not get drug tested whatsoever, and paid for drug testing. And then, you know, there were shows where, you know, like the UKDPA Heart of England, where as soon as I won, I got followed into a very small room. I pissed into a bottle and off it went, you know, and I got properly drug tested. And they also said, you know, do you want to document this with the video you're recording for YouTube to show all of these things? And, you know, it's like a very welcoming look, like, this is how it's done kind of thing. And I think that should be more like popularized, is that we need to show a bit more of the drug testing behind the scenes, like show that it's happening, because it's very easy for people to think that it's not happening, or it's being done poorly, you know, when it's not actually a documented thing. It's like, if we don't, it's like saying, it's like doing a fight, you know, doing a UFC fight, being like, here's the weight that you have to hit, but don't worry, like, we're not gonna weigh you. Like, just try, like, just look like you're roughly that weight. Or like a weigh in for a bodybuilding show. You're 74. It's meant to be under 72. No worries, you're in the lightweight. You're fine. It's all good. It's just bullshit. You know, it's like the most fundamental aspect of what we do, but it's the most hidden. And yeah, again, I'm not gonna, you know, say that we need to film people pissing into bottles, but we at least need to, like, show a little bit more of the process behind it, I think.
Yeah, it is what separates us from the other side of the sport. So it should be something that is, like, you know, should be proud of the methods, or proud of the testing. And this is something that I see within, like, say, the Irish Powerlifting Federation. They publish their spending on, you know, drug testing across the year. You know, which, you know where your federation fee is going. You know where your entry fee is going. It's transparency that you need, because, you know, it is kind of nice to know that the money that you're paying for a show, you know where it's going, whether that's the athlete experience, whether that is the likes of drug testing, media production, or whatever. But I guess I don't know the inner workings of a lot of federations, so I'm not going to speak to what the inner workings look like. But I don't know how many of them, like, run as, like, kind of boards, or they've got committees, or they have, like, different positions for different people, or is it just, like, maybe 2 or 3 people running different things? I don't know if you know much about, like, DFBA, how they run.
Yeah, I have some insights into that, in the sense that, like, that's kind of what the DFBA Global are trying to do, is they're trying to form a little bit more of a committee where we have obviously a president, we have a set of regulations, and then we have the concurrent sort of like influence of many different federations formed into one. So it's like had the influence of like the NBA in Australia, the AMBF in America, the UKDFBA in the UK. We have some people affiliates from like France and Italy coming on board as well. And I think it's the goal there is to try and to merge the influence of how we do things in different places to try to get a little bit more unity. So I think that's what DFBA is trying to pursue a little bit more. People can find more out about that. They did a load of podcasts last year, and I guess I'll put out more content this year. In terms of like how other federations are run, typically there's just a president, and then that's really it. And then they follow a set of legislations that is either laid down by said president, or in this case, you know, with myself and the MBW, like I follow all of the guidelines and regulations of the UK DFBA, primarily because our show is fed from the UK DFBA. And then the UK DFBA are taking rules, regulations, obviously drug testing through water, but then the rules, regulations kind of also permitted from that DFBA global, which is the influence of the other federations. So I think we're getting a little bit closer to having a little bit more of that, like boards and committees and decision making that is not just randomized by a single promoter, but is formed upon unity and clarification and a team of people. Because that is a problem, you know. And I think gone are the days of one person making the decision and thinking that that's right, and I think gone should be the times of saying, oh, okay, we're just going to run a natural show because they're popular, and we're not going to have a clue how to test for things or what rules to follow. But it's all right. We'll make money from it because people want to come and collect a card from us, or a title or a trophy or whatever it may be. So, yeah, that's where I think we should be heading.
Yeah, I think it's just a case of those type of moves will make the sport look a lot more legitimate, professional, and from like the outside looking in, like this is a proper operation that's happening here. That's definitely like I could just talk about my experience from coming from the powerlifting scene in Ireland. Like the Irish Powerlifting Federation are probably the most professional federation like in the whole country. And it's because they have that like committee-based system. They have an AGM where members can submit motions for things that they think that the federation could do better. They can see where the money's going. They can suggest different ways to have the money being spent, what would improve athlete experience, all these kind of things. And then every year, AGM, and they have an AGM where they recruit or elect different members, or people can vote on who is doing an effective job. And like, that's all volunteers, you know, so it's not people who are getting paid for it, and they don't make anything from being a member of the federation, but it's people who are investing in the sport. And, you know, just, I think as much as we can proselytize about what we want to see in the sport, you know, there's people who have to enact it and do it. So I guess, like, you know, that's maybe something for me to look into. How can I improve it on my end versus just criticizing it, you know, because it's easy to criticize these things, right?
Yeah, of course.
Put my hand up and say that, but ultimately then, like, it comes down to us, because there's no like paid position, there's no college for how to do this or anything. It's just a case of putting your hat in the ring. So but I think what you're doing with the likes of NBW and, like, you know, putting your hat in the ring and trying to like lead the charge for like the next generation of shows, like, you're already onto a winner with definitely changing from the side of the UK.
Thank you, mate. Yeah, I think that was the big thing that I wanted to do with the Impact, is that this time last year I was very hesitant with chatting and talking, because it is very easy to speak, and it is very easy to say something like, I'm going to put on a great show, or I'm going to invest X amount of money or whatever, and be like, you know, big bollocks over here with, you know, putting in this and live stream this and whatever. So I was very careful as what I said, but now I can speak confidently about the process of running a show and the impact of what it is truly like to like give back to athletes and provide something very, very, very good, because all the comments were very, very good. And, you know, all of the things that I kind of tentatively said that would happen did happen. And I think nowadays there is a lot of kind of false promises with a lot of things. You know, you kind of get led to think that something's amazing when it's really not. So if you're going to say something's really good, if you're going to try to drive something forwards that is genuinely for the benefit of the athletes, better do it. Because, again, I said this time last year, I'm not in the running of the show game to make a lot of money. I'm in it to have an impact and to provide a stage that is something that is going to be very memorable for a lot of people. And, I confirmed that with the amount of money that I scraped from the show. It's like, just about heading into the green, put it that way. So, and I'm prepared to do the same again because I just genuinely really enjoyed it. I really enjoy having a positive impact. And the same could be said sometimes with coaching, because you know what it's like. It's like you have some clients where you spend so much money to go to their shows and to travel and to watch them do their thing. And whether it's powerlifting, bodybuilding, if you look at the money that you've actually spent to go and travel and support them and, be there, you've lost money. You literally have lost money on the whole coaching. Like, add up 12 months of coaching, 16 months of coaching. You've lost money on a client, but you do it because you love it. And you do it because of the wider scale impact that's then building your business. And for me, it's about the wide scale impact of building MBW and the opportunities for, people I coach and other athletes to have a genuinely epic experience. So money wise, it's okay, cool. As long as I'm not like fucking losing money every year, then that would be great.
Yeah, I think that's something for a lot of people to consider, whether that's like run the show or something along those lines. Like it's more so about having that impact, as you said, like, having a bit of purpose as well. Like, I mean, like, look, as much as we can love coaching and enjoy our day to day, it's nice to have something else that kind of breaks the monotony, as well as, when you work as an online coach, you spend so much of your days not really seeing any other people. Like, I see Emma and I see a couple of people in the gym. That's about it.
Same, yeah.
Getting to go to like a show, meet your clients that you've been speaking to through a laptop screen for the last few months, and they kind of seem to do well. Invaluable, and it's great for building a relationship, because you definitely start to care about people that you work with, like actually care, versus just like just some online transactional relationship. So like being able to actually like see them, whether it's on stage or on platform, like achieve what you've worked both together so hard for is class. And like that's like the type of impact that like just is so rewarding and makes like coaching, or like in your case coaching and running a show, like just that little bit more like meaningful.
Definitely, couldn't agree more.
So now that we're kind of talking a tiny bit about coaching, right? We kind of built in that segue there. What are some things that maybe across like I'm just going to keep it like to the last like 1 to 2 years, is there anything that you've changed your mind a little bit more on in regards to training across the last 2 years, or any kind of big shifts that were taking place?
Honestly, not massively. I'd say perhaps I am influencing athletes to train in a way that allows them to get more effective work over the course of a microcycle, rather than the constant pursuit of killing yourself in every single session. Like, there's a lot of athletes now that I work with that, especially in week 1, will try to like prove something to me as like how hard they can train, and they'll be like doing 1 minute long reps on the leg extension and, taking a couple of forced reps on everything with a training partner. And one thing that I've just definitely witnessed with my own training is that my progression has been significantly more linear without taking loads of grinder and 50-50 reps. And I hate to say it, because I'd much rather it be the other way around, where I could just die in every session and take forced reps and be that guy that's doing a super slow rep on everything to the death and make more progress. But it's just not the case. It just buries you eventually. I think just like, as much as it sounds such a boring thing to say, but like limiting exposure to complete maximum intensity, especially when you can when you can really get there, that's something that I've probably changed my mind on a little bit over the last like 4 or 5 years. Outside of that, like, I've always been someone that believes in hitting things as frequently as possible, but I think maybe this last off season specifically for me, since I'm competing, I've probably trained at the highest frequency I've ever trained. You know, when I was running push-pull legs, I was running push-pull legs like 6 days a week and making really good progress. So hitting everything twice a week. And now I'm back at home and in a really good routine and having, you know, zero travel, low life stress. I'm hitting my upper body 3 times a week and still making some great progress. And, you know, for a large part of off season, the last one, I was running push pull off, legs off, and thinking that fuck, I need a rest day either side of legs every leg day because well, one, I'd either be burying myself too deep, or I'd be trying to pursue so much load exposure progressions that I'd be getting incredibly strong. Yes, and I'd be doing some of my biggest lifts, but my total net ability to accrue effective reps, effective amount of volumes was so trashed through being so like constantly systemically fatigued, you know. And again, I hate to say these things because I'm just bored of the sound like systemic fatigue and all that shit. But it is really, when you think about it on paper, like you need to be able to be quite, especially when you get advanced, you need to be more strategic than just a pursuit of all out strength. I'm not trying to be a power lifter, but on a Cybex Smith and a Cybex hack. And that's essentially what a lot of my training kind of looked like. And don't get me wrong, it built a good amount of tissue, but I do think it was limited for bodybuilding. It was superb for building all out strength and being able to move significant loads. And I'm still really strong as a byproduct of that. And I think, you know, you'll agree probably like a lot of your strength focused work cross transfers nicely to more hypertrophy style training. And it allows you to use loads that are already pretty fucking heavy for multiple repetitions and still staying away from those death reps. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think that's kind of the wrap up. Is a little bit more like understanding as to how I can get the best out of my bodybuilding training with the pure focus on that, rather than trying to tie it in with also getting monstrously strong.
Yeah, I think like obviously a key factor in training is that like enjoyment element though. So like I'm sure for a period of time, while it may not have been as quote unquote optimal, it was probably very, very fun for you, you know,
So
to
fun.
just chase those those strength numbers, to, you know, have those sessions where you're taking force reps and stuff like that. And like, it's not as if they weren't effective. It's just like now you probably stumble upon the fact that like maybe there are some other kind of ways to just keep that momentum going across the block.
Yeah.
Like I remember even one time, I think I just like stalled on my adductors or something like that, and you just had mentioned in checking like, you know, take less of those 50-50 reps. And when I was doing powerlifting, I would never have went for like a 50-50 rep because like it'd be antithetical to the process of like building strength. So I don't know why once I started like, you know, following this like bodybuilding journey, that I was like, okay, if I take like force reps here, or like, you know, I'm doing like partials way past fader, that's gonna help me next week to move up the numbers. Because like what, like I guess like this is the thing you see on social media a lot, is that it's like people they're overemphasizing like motor unit recruitment or, you know, type 2 muscle fiber activation, without kind of realizing that like if we're kind of looking like really hard at like fatigue mechanisms and stuff like that, a lot of the times that's like looking at like a single like time point versus looking at like how that looks across 8 to 12 to 16 weeks. Like does that lead to, that may create the stimulus for the most robust hypertrophy stimulus right now, but is that what's yielding to that stimulus being built over time? Probably not. Like, and I think that's something that plays out a lot more when you watch actually like people who are like really muscular trained, like they don't take those force reps all that often. I think that they're the videos you see on social media maybe because that looks fucking cool. Sometimes when you take your last rep and you know the next one is going to be like that like 50-50 grinder, the last rep might not look as like impressive or that you've even worked as hard, but you know in your mind when you get trained enough that like that next one is just not going to move.
Yeah, exactly. And that's it. That's just why it's like a learnt skill, and it's something that maybe if you're a younger listener watching this, like maybe take what I said there with a pinch of salt. And if you're in the first 5 years of training, failing in the bottom of a leg press or a hack squat, provided you don't get hurt, probably like a cool thing just to be able to understand where the failure points are. I'm a big believer as well that there's a mechanism within the mind that if you start to do that every single session, your belief is that you have to either finish there, or your mind just kind of just gives up, like once it starts to get a bit hard. And I see that a lot within my kind of like less experienced athletes within their training clips, where they go for a rep that I know is like probably 3 reps in reserve, and then the next one they just literally just die. They don't, it's not like it's a slow transition to failure, it's just death. And that's why I think a training partner can help you learn like the failure point, because they can kind of notice your rep speed, understand where you're starting to get a little closer to failure, and then I just nudge you through that final rep. But it's the all-encompassing thing is taking your sets to that nice sweet spot where it is that, like last few stimulatory reps, you're composed, your tempo's not drastically adjusted, your breathing is consistent, and that just takes a fuck ton of time to get there. So yeah, ultimately, like, first 4 or 5 years of training, just train as hard as you fucking can, learn the skill of doing that, and then start to employ the tactic of, okay, these reps are really beating me up now, it's becoming a lot harder to step forwards and progress, I'm going to just not take as many of those and probably see more linear progression as a result of that.
Yeah, I think like for the people who are like early on in their journey, like the chances of them really messing themselves up from an injury perspective is probably a lot lower than like, somebody who's very far into the journey and very strong. And then as well, so much of what they're going to do is going to lead towards growth. So I think it's like, it's one of those bottlenecks that like you maybe start to make adjustments in your approach once you kind of reach that. Okay, I've hit plateaus, my numbers are no longer moving up, or I'm starting to get aches and pains, and it's like, okay, maybe there's something to I'm not going to say the reps in reserve, but like, training to your capacity, but not beyond it. Would be another way to put it. From a nutritional point of view, is there anything that has there been any shifts at all? Like, I mean, I feel like nutrition science has remained relatively bland,
consistent,
I'd
right?
say, across the last 10 years.
Yeah. Honestly, not much. I think maybe if you think about like timelines and trajectory for athletes and things like that, maybe my niche has now moved perhaps a little bit more towards older athletes and more experienced athletes and higher level athletes compared to like maybe 5 years ago, 6 years ago. Inherently, I've had to learn how to coach those people a little bit differently, even just for myself, like I'm not 21 and 22 anymore. So the days of pushing up 40 to 50 pounds above my stage weight are just they're not needed, and they're not productive anymore. Staying that little bit leaner, staying a little bit closer to competition weight for most of the athletes that I work with that are an advanced level has been probably a major shift in my coaching compared to just like, right, let's fucking go, let's get really big and really strong, which worked so well and still continues to work so well for my like less experienced and younger athletes. And I still very much believe in that. I still very much believe in, like, to build your foundations, you've got to get big, heavy, and strong. Some of the biggest naturals that I know have always done that. That's never going to change. But if you're that 30-plus-year-old natural bodybuilder that's following the off-season of a 18 or a 19-year-old and trying to emulate the same sort of trajectory of bodyweight gain, it's going to result in a shit ton of fat, that you're just going to have to pull off at some point. So that's probably changed. And then gone back and forth a little bit with like diet breaks during contest prep. Sometimes I use them, sometimes I don't. I think I'm more of a fan now of actually just starting athletes quite a lot leaner than I did 5 years ago, and utilizing more back-to-back refeeds throughout contest preps rather than like doing these really, like, my preps used to look really, really long, like 30 plus weeks would be a lot of the preps I would do 5 years ago. And they'd be all like structured with, okay, we're going to diet break and deload every 8 weeks or some shit like that, and just mitigate fatigue. And I really don't think that, I think they just drew out the contest preps a little bit longer than they should have been. They didn't yield much of a improved, end result. I think people just got really bored of being in prep. So now it's like, harsher, more aggressive pre-prep phases, starting athletes leaner and almost out of the gate in the actual contest prep phase, not in the pre-prep, but in the contest prep phase, like utilizing high days straight out the gate. I'm a little bit more conscious now of not letting people go as flat as I previously let them go. Because I really think that it's not like a case of just always keeping them full, but it's a case of like mitigating some metabolic adaptations. It's a case of psychologically the benefits of running like almost a carb cycling approach. It's the performance benefits that I've seen consistently come as a byproduct of that. And it's also allowing the athlete to see what we're working with, and allowing me to see what we're working as well in terms of the physique. Because when you're running chronically flat and you've just started with too much fat to lose, it becomes quite a demotivating process when you look at yourself week to week and you just almost look either like worse or similar. Whereas when you run, you start lean, and then in the first month of contest prep, you're doing like 5 low, 2 high. After every one of the 2 highs, you're like, fuck, I look fucking mega. Again, go down again, another couple of highs. Wow, I look even better than the last couple of high days. And it's like the rhythm, the ease of the prep. I had some people run preps like that, last couple of years. And whenever I can get someone to prep like that, it's not always the case. But whenever I can, the perfect scenario, man, like the end of prep symptoms are just so drastically different to someone that's just gone gung-ho, okay, let's get after it. Like a Radu, for example, Radu felt like death at the end of that prep because came to me 20 weeks out with like 35, 40 pounds to lose. So we just had to go gung-ho at it. And then I had our athletes that were like, when is this going to get hard? And they were leaner, so it's, like how I prep athletes has really changed. And yeah, for the better, really. And it's made me also feel like even myself, I can prep with so much less negative symptoms. Like the last prep that I did was probably the least symptoms of a bad, negative prep, and the quickest recovery I've ever had from a prep as well, because it was just done well.
Yeah, so it sounds like the positioning on like kind of timelines has the approach there has changed a lot. Do you think some of that also has come from, because I know you mentioned that your preps used to be a lot longer. Do you think that has also stemmed from, I think the conversation around bulking in general has changed. I think it seems like a lot of people are not taking things as far.
Yeah.
I think I definitely was pushing my limits from the gaining side of things. And from my perspective, I wasn't doing it for bodybuilding. I was doing it for powerlifting at the time. I was trying to fit into a weight class. And now, obviously, since work with you, like I'm not pushing my body weight too hard.
Yeah.
You let me know if it was. But do you think some of that has had an effect on people potentially getting in better shape and just like being able to have these preps cut down in length?
Yeah, definitely, 100%. I think just the exposure to the deficit is one of the biggest things that I think ruins people's end products, and also like enjoyment factor, and end of the day, like again, the negative symptoms of prep is how long do you have to expose yourself to the deficit. You could still do, like still most of my preps are 20-25 weeks, but because we're running on a almost like a bit of a non-linear deficit, so to speak, with the high days, feels like some of the days are way easier than others. So it's not like 20 weeks of just chugging away at the same exact setup, day in, day out, brutal deficit. It's quite smooth, and it's just a much more laid back process, and kind of let the results come to you rather than chasing them. And, like I said, in previous preps, when I wouldn't position athletes quite as well, I would be a bit afraid to position them so well. We'd just kind of just hope that the amount of time that we'd allotted would be enough. And always it was, but the exposure to that deficit was significantly longer, much more days in the diet rather than days either out of the diet or just less total time dieting in itself. So, yeah, I think that plays a big role for sure.
Yeah, it is quite a stress when you're like my prep when I did it was 35 weeks long, and I was competing from September to November. And I definitely do feel like, well, I got leaner. I definitely found like I just started to lose muscle. Towards like the final few shows, I could definitely notice like my weaker areas definitely just started to get even weaker.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is I guess first prep mistakes, right? Like you start a little bit too soft, and sure, I didn't know any better, but I guess now there's better information out there to kind of steer people in the right direction. But at the same time, people still need to make some of these mistakes, regardless of how many times we may talk about them.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. If you got to make the mistakes, that's it.
What do you think of? I guess like this is probably something that's going to come into, well, it may or may not come into natural bodybuilding, the likes of the like peptide usages, because I know I've seen some people talk about peptides are in like the natural scene or competing in the natural side of things, and where do you kind of see this going? Like, do you see them getting put onto ban lists and stuff very soon, or even like what would your thoughts be on like people using some of like the fat loss injections when it does come to curb and appetite and stuff like that through fat loss phases? I know like while they're not like an anabolic agent, from my perspective, they kind of go against the spirit, I guess, of the sport.
Yeah. My thoughts has always been very clear on this. Anything you inject, if it's not for medicine purposes prescribed by your doctor, should be banned. Well, I think once you inject something for any degree of performance enhancing, that is not natural bodybuilding. And that's why when I've had athletes ask me, can we use injectable L-carnitine? No. No. Can you get lean without injectable L-carnitine? Absolutely. Absolutely. So we will not use injectable L-carnitine because I've, again, heard stories of teen natural bodybuilders using injectable L-carnitine to get lean. It's like, great. That's such a bad representation of the sport. That's not natural bodybuilding, in my belief. And I just think, like you said, it's like ethically or morally kind of wrong. And it's the same thing. Like even there's healing peptides like BPC 157 that is banned. So I think all of the other peptides that have maybe some mitigation of hunger sensation or appetite suppression. Even like things like cell regeneration, heavy antioxidant purposes, cell function, all of these things that, might make 1, 2, 3, 4, 5% differences, small percentages. They all add up, and they're all something that really I don't believe is natural once you start to inject something extra into your body. So that's really my blunt opinion of it, is that injectable, no, not in natural bodybuilding.
Yeah, I think considering like they're like the new guys in the block, like if you're competing in natural bodybuilding, you almost always want to be like a late adopter of supplements in general, because number one, there's like not like really any safety data. A lot of these things that are coming out. Number two, they're made by a lot of like unapproved labs. So many of them say like research chemicals as well, and you don't want to be the guinea pig.
Yeah.
You may get what it says in the tin, or you may not. Again, it's not like actual drugs from a pharmacy, which are heavily regulated. Like
Yeah.
it's literally the wild west. So it's definitely an area to definitely avoid. Keep to your creatine and your omega-3s and your vitamin D. Keep it simple.
Exactly.
So I guess like to round out the podcast, I guess like what would be probably one of the biggest lessons that you learned from bodybuilding this year?
Oh, good question. Biggest lesson that I learned. I think above anything, it's like, especially when you're going through a competitive season, it's make sure that you're in it for the journey, you're in it for the process, more than you're in it for the net result, more than you're in it for the trophy, more than you're in it for an accolade or a title or whatever it may be. You chase being, I'd say a champion of the process, so to speak, because if you do that, you can always exit that contest preparation happy. knowing that you've executed things to the highest of the levels that you could possibly execute it to. And then you let the rest fall into the hands of, 6 judges to decide an outcome that really, if you've nailed it to the best of your ability, it doesn't even matter because you couldn't have done any better. So that's the way that I uphold my process, and I encourage my clients to do so as well, where you really say to yourself, amongst the lifestyle, the environment, the balance you want, whatever, you've done your best job. Let the rest fall where it may, because I get a lot of athletes that do focus very much solely on winning a show or getting a pro card or whatever, and they don't get that, and you can see that they don't have the same satisfaction as someone that's just focused on the process. And if the more that you're process orientated, the more that you realize that, yeah, you can always unfortunately meet someone that's got maybe slightly better genetics than you, unfortunately, in this game. And if you accept that, you can just have so much more fun with it and less pressure. And you go into shows thinking, all right, let's just have some fun. I've worked really hard, to cherry on top of the already amazing process that I've pushed my body through. And view a prep or an off-season or whatever you're in as like, there's more things that bodybuilding brings to you than just a trophy or a title or whatever it may be. There's so many more things. Like, bodybuilding brings for me like amazing structure to my day. It brings my business. It brings my partner. It brings my entire life, basically. So it doesn't even matter if I place fucking 7th or win. I've still got all of those things to go back to. And, if you focus on that and cultivate that, that's a much bigger win than any trophy or title. So that's probably the biggest thing, that, especially with it being competitive season for me, that I focused on.
It's an epic message. I guess like the final question I have for you is, when is the natural the NBW show? So I can plug the dates down in the description.
Absolutely. So that's the 16th to the 18th of October. Registration Friday, and then show days will be Saturday and Sunday. Yeah, very much looking forward to it. It's the same venue, Rotherham, at the Magna Centre. And yeah, if you're wanting to come and spectate or be a part of it as a competitor, that would be much appreciated.
Right, I'll leave those details in the show notes. AJ, thank you very much for your time today.
Pleasure, mate.
I'll leave all your details as well, your YouTube, your Instagram page, all that kind of crack in the show notes. If you have enjoyed the podcast at home, go over, give AJ a follow if you haven't already, and leave the podcast rating review on the podcast platform you're listening on, and we will chat to you next week.